Hey, there it is.
There we go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to my dining room. I am Matthew. I realized last time I did this, I didn't introduce myself, so I'm going to do that. I'm Matthew, aka Sheep. I have a special guest tonight in Brendan Tuma, who I'll let you do your little spiel introduction as to who you are.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on here. I'm Brendan. Go on Twitter, Too Much Tuma. I work for Underdog. I'm the head of MLB info there. And you yourself, I mean, we've talked a lot on Twitter recently just about like the state of Underdog, MLB Bestball and games and where it's been the past year, like where it's going. And there's definitely a bit of a renewed energy that I'm seeing this year compared to previous years about Underdog baseball. And that's really exciting. And I'm excited to just see kind of like what a draft looks like with you tonight and
Welcome.
To have some tips and suggestions and whatnot. But
yeah, you didn't. Yeah. I need to know what your thoughts were when you put out a tweet that said, hey, what's the feedback on this year? And then I sent you like 600 messages in like a 24-hour period. Or at least a 12-hour period from when you first checked your messages to coming back.
No, I mean, the passion was awesome. I got a good bit feedback from yourself and others. I'm trying to think like maybe up to 20, 25 people. And honestly, like that helped a lot. That helped shape what we've done so far this year. Like we have a contest up earlier than we ever have before, the bullpen. It's just $5. Mm-hmm. To me, that was a no-brainer, but we just kind of had to show like there's a bit of an urgency. Like I think long-term next year, even like I'd love for this to be up after the World Series and people can draft as like free agency and trades are going on. I think that would be really fun and exciting. But even a lot of the feedback about the format and scoring and positions and roster size was, extremely helpful in getting things set up for 2023.
Yeah. I have one question about this contest. The pitchers usually come from the bullpen later in the game. So why is the first contest called the bullpen?
I think so I didn't come up with that name. And I was a little bit confused when I first saw it too. But then if you look on it, I think it says like the bullpen, time to start warming up. So I feel like it's like that's the idea. It's like about warming up. So we were batting around a few name ideas for that, but I know like Underdog takes a lot of pride in like the mitt returns again, like all that stuff. They like to have fun with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna enter a draft because last time we did this, I did it at the wrong time, and we were all right. We're only waiting for 2 people, so we're cool. Safe here.
I just to like say up front, so like for Underdog employees, they make these employee only drafts for us because we obviously can't play on the platform. But they have not made baseball drafts for us yet. So I'm used to like, around the year drafting all the playoff contests, like regular season football, all that stuff. There's no baseball contests up yet. So I haven't actually done a full draft myself. I have some buddies who play, who share their drafts with me. I've seen, the Badge Bros and you and baseball. A lot of other avid players share some drafts. And I'm kind of excited just to see what like the whole process looks through from round 1 to the end.
All right. Well, there's somebody named Noah in here. So if maybe we got a different Noah. Hey, what's up? It is a fabulous evening to be drafting fast, unless you're in a location where you can't draft. Rest in peace, Michigan residents. Before we started, you were talking about how you're doing some outreach to some of the other like regular season-long fantasy guys, and we actually have a who's who in here. We have MLB moving averages.
Oh, nice.
John Legaza
a little bit this morning.
And nice, yeah. And Rotogut, Vlad.
Oh shit, Vlad's in here
from FTN. Yeah, so we got and Nez, of course.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. It's funny to you pointed out a few people in here already. Yeah, so I again, feel free to cut me off when your pick's coming up if you want to talk through it or whatnot. But I come from a background of like season long fantasy baseball. I love best ball. I've learned to love best ball, both football and baseball. But a lot of my contacts, people I know within the fantasy baseball space are, season long roto people. And I don't see that community playing on Underdog as much as I think they should be. I'm biased, of course, but like we have really great games, especially best
Yep.
ball. And it's football, like season long football analysts talk about Underdog all the time. It's just not the way for baseball. So like you said, like we've been working on like partnering with a lot more people just to get the the word out.
Yeah. And I've noticed some of the people you're interacting with, and I'm trying to come in the back end, and hopefully I'll get some of them on here as we get closer to the season too.
Oh, definitely. And I'm sure and like as like a really sharp player and everything that like something that I'm sure we're gonna start talking about soon, but like there's a lot of edges to be had in this format right now. Even like I went on with the Badge Bros last week, I think it was,
Hold
and
on.
oh god.
1 second. So I have gotten these late round picks quite a bit recently. So as we get into it, the whole outfielders getting pushed up. I've started to try this sort of build where I fight back on that and take two. Like when I get this scenario and I don't get, sometimes Kyle Tucker will fall here, but without really jumping to. Basically, you have to jump to Kyle Schwarber, which
It's too big a jump.
is well. Right now, I have straight projections loaded from a projection source. So they have Trey here quite a bit ahead, and we can get into positions and stuff. But the idea that I've been trying lately is if you get to this scenario where you have some of these really like high scoring infielders that come to you at the back, like just pair up a couple of them and plan on doing like 5 max on infield.
I like that. I think a lot of what I've been learning from the analysis that a lot of people have been doing is just getting a little more different with constructions. I think when people play Underdog the first time, their natural reaction is to be super balanced with whatever,
Yep.
like 7. I'm trying to do the math in my head, but it would be like 7-7-6 or 6-7-7, or
Yeah.
however that math shakes out. But is to be
Usually
really balanced. And I think
8-6-6 is kind of the
yeah. And I
balance
think
in my
in
mind.
football we saw a lot of people advocating for running backs. If you get one of the stud ones early, if you take that like hero running back approach, then to like lay off that position a little bit, because if you do well, that player you took early is going to be scoring for you all the time. So in this start that you just had, taking J Ram and Trey Turner, like theoretically those guys should be scoring for you every week. So there's probably no need for you to have 8 infielders on this team now.
Right. And these are guys that play every day. Well, most of these guys up here at the top are, but it's really you're just the risk is injury. It's not really these players not scoring.
Oh, nice. I just zoomed in a little bit so I can see the board a bit better now.
Okay. Yeah, Nez has got us on the big screen. That's I know you were just out in Hollywood, Nez, and living the life, but a Friday night watching us on the big screen, I don't know about that. Yeah, Woo J Train's been out on Twitter talking about this strategy and stuff. Got Fancy Dave, first time he's doing MLB Bestball this year. Yeah, so we can definitely talk about roster construction. I got open here over on what is it? underdognetwork.com/baseball is all Brendan's writings. And here his article this week is actually some data from baseball talking about structures and pitchers and stuff. So definitely go check that out. And if you go, let's see, there's a really nice, I really liked this starting article that you put out. It really laid out everything, just basic stuff, because like it's easy for me to forget just like how different this format is and like how potentially somebody might be confused coming in. So this lays it out really nicely. And then you've been doing other articles, starting at the top at outfielder and then working your way through positions and talking about them. And not necessarily who you want to pick at this point, but just talking about general stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. I went on with the Badge Bros last week, and they started asking me about like player takes at one point, and I realized I've been so focused on like the macro level strategy of roster construction and all that stuff. I
Right.
was like, oh Jesus, who do I like this year? Because at some point that's going to matter, and I envision like the next few weeks still looking at this from the roster construction standpoint, and all of that. And then in March, it's time to really zero in on those players, because one thing I keep coming back to is for all the roster construction talk, and it's debatable if how predictable these performances were, but like if you had Aaron Judge or Paul Goldschmidt last year, like those were, not to like overuse the saying, but like the guys you needed in all likelihood to get to round 2.
Yeah, and then if you were in the playoffs and you had Bo Bichette,
mm-hmm.
It just gave you an edge.
Yeah, so eventually at some point that's going to become, a really important talking point. But yeah, we'll talk about the pitchers as they start coming off here a little bit more. It's the pitcher point is twofold almost. Like I don't think the aces are being drafted early enough, and I think there's way too many pitchers going late. So it's on both ends right now that I think there's some inefficiencies.
Right. Yeah. Your first pitcher article was about the aces, and then the second one was more about how the late pitchers we're not good at picking them, and the ones that we are picking are not scoring very well.
I'm looking at John's team there, moving averages. He's got 2 outfielders and a starting pitcher. So like,
yeah,
process wise, I like that build.
Oh, we are on the clock. Yeah, so I'm going to actually, let's see. It's really bad, or not bad. It's different when you're on the edge like this, because you kind of have to look ahead and plan ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take someone I don't really have much of. I'm going to take a couple of pitchers here. The last few builds that I've done with this early infielder, I've sort of gone 2 outfielders next. So I want to do this time taking 2 pitchers and see how that feels, sort of thing.
That makes sense.
To answer Noah's question here quick, sorry to interrupt you. I am using a straight projection converted to Underdog scoring right now, with everyone sort of jumping on that idea a little bit this year. I'm gonna keep what projections I'm using exactly right now to myself. But in general, my strategy as the season goes, or draft season goes, is going to be just like every few days switch the projection system I'm using just to get some more diversification. I don't know if that's smart or not, but that's because I feel like this year, as compared to last year's, that sort of idea of using specific projection system X as an example is already out there.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think also that something I've been having a lot of conversations with about people who are new to Underdog and possibly interested enough to where they think they have an edge to be a volume drafter, be doing 50, 75, 100 drafts of each contest, is it's really about like, if you do have a player take that you really like, then it's about like kind of like building that portfolio. So like, I really like your point about like mixing up the projection systems that'll give you different looks at different guys. And then from there, if there is someone, especially in like the middle to late rounds, that you can kind of always nab or more often than not, then you can start targeting them.
Yeah, last year my guy was Brandon Belt,
Mm-hmm.
so you know how that worked out for me.
I was in love with the 2021 Giants, and I liked a lot of them heading into last year too. So I'm right there with you on the Giants.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I paired him and Brandon Crawford a lot at the end, but a lot
Mm.
of also just my last infielder was Brandon Belt because he was always there.
Yeah,
It's like
no,
who's
Evan Longoria
gonna
was
get a
my
bunch?
guy.
Yeah, yeah. He had like for the few games that he played, he had good points per game in underdog scoring for the weeks that he did play.
Yeah, and then throughout the season, Jock became my guy, especially in a lot of my season-long leagues with like daily lineups. Sorry, I just want to point
Oh,
out those first two teams there, Nez and
yes.
John, both going full outfielder starting pitcher, so really leading into the current macro trends of the day right now.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so I kind of started thinking about this last time I said it out loud, and I'm still sort of been thinking about it since for these top level guys. Um, for me, as you said, like a volume drafter, I have a hard time really tying myself to any super strong player takes up here, just because these guys are pending health. They're all going to play, and they all have a chance of doing well.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's. I know, like someone like John, moving average. You know, he is pretty tied to some of his player takes. He has some. You know, he does a ton of like individual player research, and he gets very strong opinions about stuff, which is great. But when for me, when if I'm doing a bunch of drafting, I feel like I mean I have some player takes up here, like Michael Harris. I'm afraid of, but I also don't want zero of him.
yeah, no, I think that's a good way to approach it, and I think that's what I really like about that portfolio approach. I remember 2021, I was just in general really big on Vlad that year. And talking to my former colleague back at Fantasy Pros, Dan Harris, he was saying how like Vlad is the type of player, if you only do one league, it's understandable if you don't want to pay the price on him. But if you were in like 5 season-long leagues, like you got to get him in at least one, because like just in case what happens. And then like we saw what happened. So and again, that's where that like portfolio aspect of drafting best ball comes into play.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start with
Oh my god, it's so ugly.
I'm gonna start with a guy who's gonna be on base a lot and hopefully be brought in by Jose Ramirez. So we haven't really dug into stacking. I know we're
I was
all
just
waiting
going to ask you about that.
on the stats master Chris baseball. Um, man, it's hard not to go another outfielder here.
If you do take one, I like Saya seems like a easy bounce back
Yeah.
candidate.
Okay. Yeah. Marte is probably someone I want to, and Hap is not going to go, despite being on the top of these rankings. He's probably not going to go between now and it comes back to us.
I think before we get to stacking, I think another interesting thing, because I see Jake McCarthy there at the bottom of the
Oh
outfield
yeah,
rankings, and you mentioned Michael Harris, and these are guys. Bobby Witt's another example who, if a lot of people who do approach Underdog coming from a roto background in fantasy baseball, where batting average and speed are just really important, that just like isn't the case in the current Underdog scoring right now. And I wonder if that almost like props up their ADP. I mean, like Jake McCarthy is, by June he could be out of a job, whereas like if you're playing for stolen bases, that makes a ton of sense that you want to take that risk on him. But I can't imagine really going after him in this format.
yeah, and he's a guy that I started out with a lot of taking him quite often because when as you know, or as other people might not know, when you guys first released the contest, you had just taken the steamer projections,
Mhm.
and he had based on that, he had a ton of at bats, and like he had a good lineup spot. So he was just up there due to volume, which it might not be a bad thing, but like you said, you got to start thinking about his role going forward too.
John just took him actually, but I just saw like Stanton win. That feels like I like that pick in this spot for this format.
Yeah, and he's continuing to build up that
Dude.
that outfield.
Nez, if you're listening right now, you're getting your Pirates, which I respect. We still have to have our Pirates conversation, but O'Neal Cruz is one. I don't know. I don't know on O'Neal Cruz for this year.
Yeah, yeah. I think he might be playing into it too a little bit. I know he's not taking him as much as he did, just because the cost is a lot higher, and this questions are still sort of there. Like we know he can hit for power.
What is it? Was that that was the end of the 6th round? He took O'Neal Cruz, and that's like in a roto format, like where I'd be targeting Cruz and like selling out for upside a little bit because you're hoping for the the homers and the steals and everything.
Right.
So yeah, I know you and I were talking a little bit offline about scoring and what that could look like in the future and everything. I think again, like nothing for this year. Like this year, things are going to stay, for mostly status quo as we get hopefully a lot of new players onboarded and current players are still figuring out the inefficiencies and all that. But like long term, I think it'd be fun to like mess around with scoring and like different contests, like not for the main dinger tournament, but for little like side tournaments and everything where like we could have a contest where like stolen bases are like worth as much as home runs or something like that, just to like mix it up.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not only is our stolen bases like not a category that you need like in roto, they are kind of like suppressed in scoring.
Yeah.
When you compare it to the other stuff. All right. We got a really boring outfield so far, and this I kind of don't want to miss out on outfielders completely. I want to. This is really tough to pay for Tyler O'Neill here. I'm actually going to continue this kind of mini stack idea and take Nick Castellanos to go with Trey. And then I'm going to see what we got for pitcher. This is a guy I've been taking a ton of lately in Joe Musgrove.
I was just going to recommend him there because it seems to be a little bit of a drop off in terms of durable pitchers. And when I say durable, I don't mean injury prone. I mean guys who can pitch 6 innings consistently.
Yeah, that's exactly why. Like him and you from San Diego, like those guys just can go. They have no leash.
I think it was Scott White of CBS who I was listening to their podcast said this, talking about pitchers, but like so often we think of older pitchers having risk because they're getting older, their arms are going to fall off, they're going to get hurt. But the way baseball is being played, and if you do use wins or quality starts for your scoring, which obviously Underdog uses both, you almost want those older pitchers because they've been built up to go deep into games. Whereas like Nick Lodolo, who just went in this draft, like I really like Nick Lodolo as a breakout pick this year, but I'm not positive he's going to break out, and therefore I'm not positive he's going to go 6 innings every time. Whereas like Musgrove, I feel a lot more confident about that 6 inning, 3 earned run floor on a per start basis, which is hugely important for Underdog.
And even if he does break out, he still has to pitch in Great American Ballpark, which isn't too terrible in terms of the scoring format, but maybe they don't want to just like ruin him this year by just keep throwing him out there.
I see. Actually, I missed. He went last round, Bryce Harper. I wanted to ask your thoughts on handling Bryce in this tournament.
His cost has got too high. So the argument is, right, he's the guy you need in the playoff weeks because he'll be back, he'll be healthy. and there I was taking him when the contest started because, like I said, you drop the projections, and the original ADP was based on a really low volume for him, obviously because he's going to be out for a while. So I basically tried to grab him a bunch at the beginning, and sort of ignored him now.
That makes sense. And if you already got your shares, there's less of a need to do that.
Right. And one other thing is Beyond Meat Fan, who I've seen in quite a few of these drafts, he did it the right way, in my opinion. Well, he's got it. He's really leaning into it. He's taking Juan,
Yeah, it's a great
Byron,
outfield.
Eloy, Chris, Harper, JD Martinez, all guys that can smash the ball, but all have a question mark. In my not Juan, but we know we're getting him. But everybody else has some sort of question mark that they are taking all these outfielders early, and they're taking some risks. Like, is Chris Bryant's back okay? Is heels okay, or whatever? All that stuff. Is Bryce Harper going to be back in time to contribute? But he's putting it all that risk together,
mm-hmm.
and just leaning into it, which is it's kind of fun. And
Yeah.
also, even if you don't want to do all the risk, if you want to take Bryce Harper and you think he's the guy you need later, I think he can't be like your first or second or maybe even third outfielder.
Yeah. I was just to say, I don't think Trevor Story's gone yet. Not that he's as impactful as Bryce Harper, and he also plays the deeper position, but I'd almost look at it if he's going like a lot later than Bryce, then maybe it's worth considering getting your quote unquote guy you need that way.
Yeah. So we've really got a outfielder is disgusting at this point.
Are you willing? Okay, it looks like you're gonna take Winker. I was gonna ask, are you willing to just like fade outfield for a couple rounds and come back to it at this point? Or?
So usually I'm like I said, the last few builds I've been doing, I've been getting a lot of late outfielder, and I'm taking those boring guys that are just volume plays like Brown and Laureano. Sorry, we're on the clock here. Probably don't need to take him now. Charlie Morton should come back to us. You know what? I'd rather have Chris Bassett. All right, so sorry. This is kind of hard to do on the turn here when there's two picks at once. But yeah, so for this build, let's see. So I took the two infielders first. Like we said, those guys are going to score for us every day. And then we took two boring outfielders. All right, no, I guess we took two high strikeout, high upside, older pitchers that can pitch into games. Then we went to the outfield, and we took two boring outfielders that are just like on base guys, potentially that should just hit high up in their order, and then took a few risks of bounce back guys for outfielder. So that's sort of the overall structure I've got so far.
Yeah, I like this build. That's really interesting about like the what you were saying up top about the two infielder double tap and then kind of backfilling that position while focusing on the other areas. I think you might have shared on Twitter the other day. I think you shared one where you had either like the 11th or 12th pick in a similar build.
Yeah, and I got it was a Vlad and Freddie start. Mm-hmm. And actually in that one, I did two more infielders. I got Bregman and Altuve, and that basically, turned it off to my last pick to get a fifth guy.
I think that team, if you could like pull up the draft board again, the team that had all those outfielders, but there's no starting pitchers. So I'm.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like really interested to see how that team's gonna play out. I don't know if I've personally, and I'm not in the public draft rooms, obviously as much as you are. I don't know if I've ever seen a team not take a pitcher to this point.
Yeah, maybe
10
not
rounds.
to this point. Yeah, because Artie over here actually just took his first one
Oh,
also.
okay, wow. So there's a couple that are
So
getting weird.
this I think you would call your zero pitcher build. So yeah, we got, and in this case, your article that you put up about being, those low scoring late round guys, you almost sort of have to just assume that they're going to score bad, and or most of them are going to score bad, and go based on volume at that point in this sort of build.
Yeah, that's tough too, though, because then if they're all bad, I mean, I guess if they're all bad, it doesn't matter anyway. But it's less about like I hear all the time people will talk both on Underdog and in like managed drafts. They're like, oh, I really like this player as a late round pick. It's really easy to uh, identify like a late round pick that you like, but it's really hard to use a roster spot on that. Like to me, it's less about the cost and it's more about you only get. All right, first of all, Nestor Cortez is like I think a pretty good value there, but
Mhm.
for his first pitcher. But like it's more about the roster spot because you only get 20 of them and they're so important. I think.
Yeah, yeah, and in Roto, you like, as you pointed out in your article, you can drop them in Roto if it's
Yeah,
not the right guy, and you can try another guy, or
I
pick up a guy with a good matchup that isn't the guy.
yeah I think again, like I mentioned, like I have a few like buddies who have been drafting, and he's not in the player pool yet. We're gonna aim to get that fixed for the dinger. But like my buddy was asking me about like Anthony Volpe and if he should like use his last round pick on him. And my advice was no. And it was primarily because like I ultimately said like he talked me into like it could be unique if no one else says Anthony Volpe and he gets to the end and Volpe's up, like yeah, like I can always be talked into uniqueness for Underdog. But
Let have him come to me, and I'll tell him all about my Nate Peterson lineups from last year.
uh but my take was that there's just no guarantee that like Volpe might not be up to like he might not be up at all. Might not be up till September or something. And in Underdog, like you said, like those boring outfielders that you took, the floor in best ball is just like so important. I think some people view it as like you gotta sell out for like the ultimate late round upside so you can win the whole big tournament. But like
Right, you
I
need
feel like with
Spencer
a lot,
Strider.
yeah. But I feel like with a lot of those late round picks, you actually just want that floor, like Jeff McNeil last year.
All right, I'm going to take a couple of guys in the infield here that getting a little good ADP value on in Real Muto and Muncie. I guess not so much Muncie, but Real Muto is a little bit past his ADP, so we'll jump back over there. And now with these four guys, this is probably a 5 or at most 6 infield, just based on taking the 2 in the first. Definitely
Yeah,
don't want to go to 7.
yeah, depending how it shakes out, 5 would maybe be interesting there. Do you worry at all about like uh John Means?
Fun fact that John Means was actually on the winning Dinger roster. So you can do it.
For catchers, do you worry at all about playing time in a given week where it's like you can look at JT Realmuto's projection and compare that to other hitters, but you also know like JT Realmuto is probably never going to have a 7-game week.
That's true. But he's JT Realmuto.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the catchers I'm taking, I haven't gotten. I feel like he is. People have last year he was a lot better value.
You have the Philly stack too,
and I do have the Philly stack. This is probably the most I want of a one-team stack. I haven't gone up to 4 much this year. I did a lot more last year, and I guess ultimately it didn't work out. So this might be just like throwing away the idea of correlation too soon. But if you really think about how the points get scored and spread through a week and then spread over multiple weeks, that correlation just sort of disappears, right?
Yeah, I think
the correlation that we look for in like DFS, like you're getting that in a 1-game sample, is a lot better.
I think that there should be a little bit more talk about Underdog being a weekly game, because I think what trips a lot of people up is right now you're drafting and you see that projection number, and that's for the season, and people start just comparing season long totals. Where that's part of my aces argument of them being undervalued is the aces score less than even some like mid-level hitters, but on a weekly basis a two start week for an ace is going to outscore uh like the hitters.
Right.
So yeah, I think that that's something I'm trying to keep reminding myself of as I'm, looking at how things are playing out, and honestly doing my own draft prep for the employee contests.
Yeah, you better win that contest.
So it's really funny. I assume you did like the playoff um,
Yeah.
MLB.
Yes.
So I won that version of the employee one, but the draft that won it was like half auto drafted and was not my strategy going in.
Oh, you auto drafted.
Like accidentally. I was one of those like you join again, like this is like embarrassing to me, but I was like I had joined a draft and it wasn't full yet, and then like all of a sudden it filled before I realized.
Yeah.
So there was like a few picks that weren't technically mine. I'm like, oh wow, this is the one that ended up winning.
Yeah, and reducing juice here is saying, for the week, the week scoring period, you're never going to get, or you're barely ever going to get a two-start week out of a Angels pitcher because they are using a 6-man rotation.
That's a really good point.
And it is supposed to be a little bit different this year. I don't know if you saw some of the comments, but basically they're going to, when they have a day off, they're going to count that as the 6th guy for Ohtani, so he'll be pitching like maybe 1 or 2 more games.
I love how Ohtani, like when Ohtani first came over, it was they're going to be very careful with him. He's not going to hit the day before or after he pitches, and he wasn't like that good. Like he had some moments, but it wasn't coming together. He had the injury, and then all it took was them for the be okay. We're just going to play you every day, and since then he has both stayed healthy and fully broken out, and he keeps getting better every year.
Yes, adding new pitches and whatever. Yeah. Quick thing here. There's a ADP jump on Bader, which is interesting. Here's a question. Like one of the first questions a lot of people have is how Ohtani's handled.
It's yeah, you and I were talking offline about just like some changes that a lot of people in the community would like to see, and that like I would like to see. And yeah, I mean that's definitely one of them. I don't know if it would ever be. We're at the mercy, and I think a lot of people understand this from if you play on ESPN or Yahoo or any of this stuff. But like you're at the mercy of like your stat providers for what you can do. I think the best we could do is possibly just have like a second Ohtani that's a pitcher, which I know isn't perfect, but it would be better than only having him as a hitter right now.
All right, we're just gonna take. I keep doing it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna take these outfielders in Oakland, because who else is gonna play in the outfield for them? Like they have no reason to not play those guys.
Yeah, and I see Jock there, and we were talking about like the Giants and stuff like that. And that's when like if this was like a daily lineups league, like I would have been, banging the drum there for Jock. But again, like if they face 3, God forbid 4 lefties in a given week, he probably won't do too much for you.
Yeah. I know Nez is big on Jock just because of the weeks that he can get out of him he hits a ton of home runs.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see what we got here. Stacking pitching staffs. Yeah, and this is something that we sort of talked about, not you and I, but some of the people in the community talked about a lot last year. And I don't know that we really came to a consensus on it. But what baseball had found is basically, after looking back at who actually got 2-start, it's like it was just random. Like there's no way you could have really done anything to figure it out. Vlad joining the chat.
Oh,
hey,
nice.
Vlad.
Teams are not announcing their starting pitchers until like 2 days in advance sometimes nowadays. Cause like what I do, like for my main day to day at Underdog, is like we run that Underdog MLB account and we have like projected lineups the night before and we lock in, who's pitching the next day. And we
Yeah.
have a sheet that goes a few days out to lock in starters that get announced. And it was really surprising last year to see how few starting pitchers are announced, like 2-3 days in advance. So like you're saying, like these teams are just making it up as they go.
Yeah, and I think this is a staff you can do it with. Like if you take one, let's see, Morton and Strider, for instance.
Yeah, Kyle Wright too.
Kyle Wright, yeah, and Max Fried. All those guys have depth on their own. All those guys can. Well, I don't know what Strider. I don't know what they're going to do with Strider this year, but those other guys, they can have that depth that we want, that quality start, win equity. Like, so even if you are taking 3 of them, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, I don't know how much extra you're getting from the potential of overlapping 2 start weeks or increasing your chance of getting one, but this is the sort of staff that I don't mind taking these guys from.
Have you looked at all at the playoff finals schedule, like what the actual MLB schedule is?
Yes.
How it matches up with Underdog?
I have not written it out. I glanced at it and looked at it for a couple of key things. Yeah, so no, which we can get to in a second. No, but Noah here is saying that his pitching, does increase his injury risk, but his outfield upside to me is just worth it if you want him in the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's double exposed to injury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the 3-team stack was Strider, Fried, Morton, which I don't hate putting those guys together. I don't know if you get an extra boost from doing it.
Yeah, and it might be one of those things like if it happened during the playoffs, then it was worth it. If not, then it might not have been. But yeah, no, I ask about the it's a project that I want to look into, and I don't even know if there's going to be any definitive takeaways, but I think at least looking at the schedule come for the finals is something that everyone should have in mind. Again, just comparing it to football, it's like all people talked about this past year is week 17. But for baseball, that like I personally haven't even looked at what it is yet. It's a project for mine eventually, but
yeah. So I'm going to take a couple of older pitchers that can have length here in Cobb and Molly. Like with who I have so far, I don't mind taking the risk on Molly and his shoulder. If he is healthy, he should be let run in Minnesota. So, but no, what the 2 things to get back to your question, the 2 things I looked at was who was playing in Colorado and who was playing in Cincinnati.
mm-hmm. No, that makes sense from a hitting perspective. I think the only other thing I would look for is if a team had like a 5-game week randomly or something. That might not even change things too much, but
I did not look at the length specifically or games played per week.
Yeah. The Rockies thing again, like this is what's really interesting about this format right now is like it's still like very much in its infancy. So I saw at one point John took CJ Crone, who like just got pulled up there, and I wonder if the Rockies are like an interesting. Unfortunately, they don't have many interesting hitters anymore. But if the ones you go ahead.
To answer your question, they play for at least a week in each playoff round.
Okay.
At home.
So it's basically like split then, but I wonder if almost they make sense in like mid to late picks where you're not as exposed to much draft equity. But like if the Rockies have a 7-game homestand, CJ Crone is, potentially really good. Brendan Rodgers potentially really good. And it's almost then like you'd almost rather them always have 7-game homestands or 7-game road trips on a weekly basis, because then the potential for them to have a really high scoring week is higher, and then the low scoring ones, who cares about? You can hopefully rely on your other players.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a team that like I kind of like to have maybe one in each lineup if I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it. And you can get, Charlie Blackmon's really jumped up a bit, and actually Randall, these guys have traveled up, but for a while you could get Grichuk like in the 200s. He was in like a 200 ADP, so I have a lot of him from that, just as my last outfielder. And then if I'm feeling saucy, maybe like add Ezekiel Tovar as the last infielder, just that little tiny chance that he's up and he's leading off there at home.
Yeah, that's what my buddy and I who were talking about Volpe in this format. Like, he then said Tovar is available to draft, and I said, look, if it's your last round pick, like, it's, I can get talked into it. I just like hate the risk of like you could get nothing from it. And like we said, you only get 20 roster spots. To get nothing from a position is deadly.
You're never going to escape from week 17. Yeah, and Toronto's in Colorado. Arizona popped up as time. I can't remember if they played in both places, and the White Sox were another team that popped up in that glance at just those two places, Colorado and Cincinnati. All right, so what are we doing here? What do we got? To answer the question before, how did we start? We started Jose, Trey. Then we got 2 ace pitchers. And then we got a couple of boring outfielders for volume because we had waited so long to get a top tier one. Then we got a couple of risky bounce back guys in Castellano, Winker, a couple of other length pitchers. Then we filled in a couple of infielders and kind of switch. I guess we've been switching infield, outfield, pitcher. And now we are on the clock. Let's see. So here's another catcher that I'm just gobbling up as much as I can. Just because of the lineup he's in. And he should bat high in that order. That just put him around Arenado and Goldschmidt, and I don't care if he plays 6 days a week. And then we got another pick. How many we have left? Got 3 picks left. I kind of want to look at outfielder a little more in depth. We're just going to take a boring infielder here in Jeff McNeil. That wasn't really too much thought into why him versus anybody else at that point, but
yeah, I feel like this is the point where like pitchers, can you pull up the pitcher ranks, where it's just like, man, I just don't like Stroman. I guess he can pitch some length, but like there's just like, this is where like it just like really falls off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So these guys here, based when you load up just like straight projections, like these guys are here because they're going to start a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally their only reason. I mean, maybe Reed Detmers takes a step. He had there's a lot of interesting stuff, including a no-hitter that he did last year. He was sort of all over the place, but maybe he steps up. But most of these other guys are here just because they're like, well, Marquez is number 1 in his rotation, and Pivetta number 1 there?
I'm a Red Sox fan, so the fact that you just asked that hurts. But what you're saying too about like these guys are just like, they're projected for whatever 27, 28 starts probably. Whereas like in a managed league, a lot of my late round picks, it wouldn't be these types, these
right,
little bit of a higher floor, low ceiling types. I would be taking, Hunter Brown or Brian Bayo or guys like that. But like in an underdog, like there's just no chance that either of those guys are gonna ultimately be going 6 innings enough to matter, and that's where it gets really tough in the late round pitcher pool here.
Yeah, it's really tough, but I guess I'd also rather be taking those shots here than say like here's the poster boy that I've been harping on a lot. Dustin May, who, well, he doesn't have a terrible ADP, but 172, which, let's see, what round is that? That's one thing I'm not good at, is dividing the number into the round. I should get better at that. So yeah, round 13, he's going, well, here's another guy, but
Yeah.
This is a really interesting pocket of pitchers because
I love Jordan Montgomery there.
because I love the Jordan Montgomery. He's gonna be that length guy that we were talking about that's just gonna be allowed to pitch. He looked good. He has an awesome defense, better park than he had last year. And then Merrill Kelly's just a guy that could pitch a lot. And like Dustin May and Grayson Rodriguez, like,
yeah,
you can take similar shots in the last round on Brian Bayo or
Hunter Brown was the other that I mentioned.
Hunter Brown. Yeah.
But like Nez just took Rowanzi there. And again, like I know it's the Pirates thing and everything. And like I really like Rowanzi too. And if he's awesome this year to be going deep into games, like I'll tip my cap and everything. I just like I would have just rather taken like a position player this late in the draft, but
yeah, and
that's just me.
I agree with you, but I would rather take Roansy Contreras now than Dustin May in the 13th.
Okay, I see your point. Yep, no, I see what you're saying.
They're not. It's Dustin May has proven a lot more of what he can do, but I think I'd rather take the risk on the last pick.
Are these your last two picks coming up?
They are. What do we want?
And you're 666, perfectly.
I am perfectly balanced. We sort of been jumping around. Let's see. This outfield is gross, but I also don't feel like adding Manny Margot to it. It makes it much better.
Has Tristan Cassis been drafted?
I'm gonna guess not. He has been drafted by our friend here. That's B Shot is a CLT Go Blue. So he took him, I'm guessing, as his last infielder. Yeah, he's got nice depth here that he can take that shot then on Tristan.
Yeah, he's like my one rookie who I feel good about like playing time. Whereas like Volpe, like I don't know, someone like Ellie De La Cruz, like I have no idea.
Oh yeah, Ellie is just off my.
Yeah, no, exactly. Whereas like Cassis, I think is gonna play from day one. He's closer to like the Gunner Carroll in terms of projected playing time for me.
All right, so I'm gonna take Luis Urias, who, well, now they added Brian Anderson. I haven't really thought about that, but I think we're gonna do a 7.76 and take my one shot that I have been taking. I'm going to take my homer shot in Aaron Ashby. I'm a Brewers fan, so.
Okay, nice. I saw you tweet about Ashby recently, and I liked him a lot last year. I still like him a lot this year. I haven't done my full deep dive on him yet this offseason, but he's on my list.
Well, I will recommend John MLB Moving Averages. He's doing some like pitcher deep dives, and his second one was on Ashby. So he's MLB Moving Averages he's John Legeza on Twitter, or you can search MLB Moving Averages. He'll pop up. But he's got some links to some deep dives, so you should start there. You don't even have to.
He had one start, I think. Oh my God, who is it against? I remember I had like tested positive for COVID, so I was like staying inside all weekend. It was like a 4 p.m. Ashby versus, it was another like young breakout pitcher. It was like in the middle of the summer, and I just like sat on my TV glued, and Ashby was awesome, and this other pitcher was awesome, and I'm totally blanking on who it was. Oh, this is gonna bug me. I'll have to think of it. Uh,
Okay.
but but like in that moment, it was like, holy crap, like it's happening with Ashby. And that's where we can get into more like player takes another time and everything. Um, but like when you see those flashes of like that dominance, like that's what I saw from Christian Javier and that like no hitter he had for 7 innings against the Yankees.
I mean, and the way the Brewers have been developing their pitchers is they've been doing that where they have that guy. Burns was this, he makes a few starts here and there, does some work in the bullpen for a year. Then they open him up a little bit the next year and they pull him early. Maybe the first or towards the end of the season, they start pulling him after 70 pitches or whatever. And then the year after is when they just let him loose.
I streamed Corbin Burns in like what year must have been like 2020, and he was terrible. And I was like, it's good. So it's incredible.
Yeah.
Now he's become like the consensus number one.
Yeah, he had a lot of mental hurdles to get over. He actually worked with like someone on that, and that was really the big breakthrough for him. But the question here from Fantasy Sports Dave kind of leads into another question that people have been sort of coming up with, and that's about like player position eligibility and like between now and when the main contest comes out. But to answer the first question here is that they will only score. They do not change during the season. They will score as whatever you drafted them as.
Yeah, so that would be something that moving forward, like I would love to be like implementing some guys like that would like change the draft board completely if some guys were eligible at both infield and outfield. And yeah, that's not a feature right now, but it's something like I would love to be in the future, for sure.
Yeah, and then so for going into the next main contest, the question comes up is what about like Jordan Walker, some of these prospects that aren't in the pool right now, and then are you going to change Jazz Chisholm now that he's going to supposedly play center field? Those sort of questions.
Yeah, so I think first of all, for like prospects or anyone that needs to be added, I might like just send out a tweet about this to ask if anyone has like a bunch of names already, because I know like Volpe, Jordan Walker, I forget there was a couple other you and I already discussed, but if anyone has names, like I'm just going to start compiling a list, and that should be no problem to get guys like that added. That was part of what we knew. Like we could have spent 3-4 more days in creating the bullpen by adding all these guys, but I think at that point we were like, let's just get it out, and then anyone we miss we'll add for the next contest. So yeah, if names like that pop up at Too Much Tuma, just let me know, or you and I can be in talks about it and make sure we're not going to miss anyone.
Yeah, I think I know I've seen other people mention. I just can't think of any off the top of my head.
Real quick, I looked up that Ashby game. It was June 4th, and it was Brewers Padres, and it was at like the height of Mackenzie Gore being awesome.
Oh yeah.
Mackenzie had 6 shutout with 10 strikeouts. Ashby actually gave up 4 runs, but he had a 9-0 strikeout to walk ratio in 6 innings. So
yeah. The thing, he seems to, even when he starts out hot, he tends to loosen up like the 4th inning or so.
It's a good mix though of grounders and whiffs, which is obviously like 2 of the best things you can do as a pitcher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I think that base will always keep him in play as a breakout candidate until it happens.
Yeah, that's sort of the conclusion that John came to on his deep dive video was just boiled down to that. Like there's all these questions, but those numbers are just so good that hard to ignore.
Definitely.
All right. Let's see if we can maybe look at what's the easiest way to look at some builds here. Pop back over. Let's see what we can do.
I want to see that whoever it was that went like all position players early, what they ended up with pitching wise.
Yeah. So Nez even is getting pretty crazy and took Ronzi as his fifth. So him and Inumi and have been really pushing that 5-pitcher build. So I'm interested to see how that goes. But this guy, so yeah, he had his first pitcher came in the 11th as Nestor, and then he stacked Luis Severino, Chris Sale, which is a pretty big risk, and who knows what Jack Flaherty is going to be. Yeah, that's scary.
It's one of those builds where if you look at it and if you go through each guy, like you can tell yourself a story about each pitcher he took, but he'll need obviously like multiple of them to all end up hitting. I do love Edward Cabrera, but again, he's someone I like him more in like a managed league where I could do something with him. But for the last round, actually, that's pretty good. Why did someone take Walker Buehler? That was a mistake.
Yeah, he's not going to pitch this year.
No, I don't think he's pitching at all.
Yeah, last year the guy was Tyler Glasnow. He was the guy that people would just take and didn't realize he was going to pitch. And then those are like a running joke among the guys that I was talking with and stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like looking like he's going to come back, and he ended up pitching like a couple of games.
Oh,
like
yeah.
He was like 2 weeks off from like coming into the playoffs and winning it for somebody randomly.
That's so funny. When you have the full board up, if you could like go to the top of the board, another player who just like really jumps out to me, especially with the outfield issue, is Eloy, who went in the 5th. Again, it's like definitely just like a very hyper specific player take. I understand he's been hurt in the past, but it seems like he's going to move to DH full time, and that should keep him healthier. And he was just awesome down the stretch last year. He was like a premium prospect. Like that ADP, look, compared to where Brian Reynolds and Randy Arozarena and like that ADP on Eloy is I think my favorite of the entire contest right now.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I've been grabbing him some, and I haven't been super prioritizing it.
It feels a little like Byron Buxton-y, where it's like, this is the year he stays healthy and is awesome. But
right. Yeah. But Randy Arozarena was actually in the top 20 of final rosters in terms of a frequency.
Like the advance rates.
Yeah. So the other day someone was asking me, or in general somewhere, about like him and Christian Yelich, their ADPs, and they were both in the top 20 of frequency, and it was more that they're just boring guys that hit every game.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
And it's not even, Eloy has the chance of, taking him here. You have the chance of him scoring up here, right? Like in the second round. But I feel like Randy's going to score here or here. Like the width on what he does outside of injury is not high one way or the other.
Definitely. No, that makes sense.
So in like this build that Artie did, like he's really locking in points here. I don't know that he needed to take all these outfielders, but let's see how.
Yeah, I want to see his pitchers now.
Let's see. So he took those 5, and I'm just going to scroll out, and then stopped. So that's an interesting idea that he just stopped taking outfielders. These are my guys, 5 of them. It's similar to what Nez did with pitcher, but he just, because it's outfield, you can't. If you want to take guys like this, you got to take them first before they're gone. But then his first one was in the 10th. Kyle Wright, Senga. He took Montgomery, Luis Garcia, Tony Gonsolin. He peppered in a lot of these boring guys.
Yeah.
That are probably not going to be the top 10 scoring pitchers, but they should give him something on most weeks if he needs it.
they're all in play for quality starts. And like someone like Tony Gonsolin, like his quality start might only come for three strikeouts, but again, he's, you know, someone who can get like wins and quality starts. Adam Wainwright, I really liked a lot going into last year.
Right. Yeah, he was a pretty good value till down the stretch, and then I don't know about him this year, just based on what we saw the decline last year. That could have been just fatigue as the season went on, though.
Yeah, he actually went on Twitter, I think, and like explained he got hit by a pitch on his heel and it like messed up his
Oh,
stuff.
really?
Yeah, but then there was like video of it and it all backed up. So yeah, I think he's just still gonna try spamming his curveball one more year. It's worked pretty well so far.
But yeah, he ended up only taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so he took 5 of each position and then just took 10 pitchers.
I wonder if I've been so locked onto this idea now that you know, maybe just taking like 5 or 6 pitchers and not taking any late and just like flooding outfielders. Like it looks like Artie did kind of like the inverse of that, where he took all his outfielders early, and then he like spammed pitchers late. And I wonder if like just taking like hard stances one way or the other in that sense is something that's undervalued right now, and it doesn't necessarily have to be pitcher. But
yeah, so let's actually, in this sort of ties into your article, the late round pitchers are a trap. We're going to jump right to the last graph because I think that's the one that really shows what we're talking about here. Let's get that a little bigger. And of course, the image doesn't get bigger. Let's try this. There we go. All right, so this is courtesy of at B3 Isball. I'm going to start calling him that. B3 Isball. Follow him on Twitter. He's doing a ton of data crunching. He generated these beautiful graphs, and he's helping you out, I know, write some of these articles and some of these graphics and stuff and data analysis. But he's also putting out a bunch of his own stuff on Twitter. So definitely follow him if you're not. I'm assuming most people already are in here, but it needs to be said. So this graph is the number of pitchers that were taken in the 16th to 20th round per lineup. So the bars here are the percentage of the total. Let's see. This is the Dinger data, right?
yeah, this all only from the Dinger.
So this is all the lineups drafted in the Dinger, and the frequency at which people took pitchers in the 16th to 20th round. So if you took 0, there's 5% of lineups. If you took 2 pitchers in those rounds, it was 34% of lineups, and so on. But then I don't know if you want to explain some of these other lines and what we can do with those, or what the conclusion you came to for your article.
Yeah, no, and baseball is like, he's just great. Like when I asked like Underdog behind the scenes people for this data, and it came to me just this like dump of information. I had no idea what to do. So I have no idea how like Chris ended up making this, but he did, and he did a really good job with it. And yeah, so that soft purple line, AROE, that's advance rate above expectation. That just basically said how likely were you to advance out of the regular season into at least round 2 of the playoffs. And then the darker one is finals rate over expectation. How likely were you to get to the finals? And like, I think the biggest thing to look at is those negative numbers above like each little dot. Because once you get to number of pitchers drafted 3 or more, all of those numbers are negative. So it was basically like negative EV anytime you took 3 pitchers in the final 5 rounds.
Yeah. So this kind of shows, that we don't know. Even if you think you probably don't know who the guy is, if there is even a guy back there that you want.
I think what it shows too is like, let's say like I'm just thinking off the top of my head from that last draft, like Marcus Stroman. Like you could tell me that Marcus Stroman ends up being like an awesome value this year. If there was a ton of quality starts, you took him in the 18th round and he ended up being a great pick. I could really buy that, but like you said, that's really hard to predict ahead of time. And I think the biggest thing is here, you don't want to be living in this range of needing to take multiple guys here, because that probably means you didn't take many pitchers early, and then you're devoting all those roster spots to trying to take low percentage shots at pitcher, where you could have just been continuing to build just an incredible stable of a floor among your
Right.
position players.
Yeah, because one of the other graphs is how pitchers score versus other positions, and pretty much all along the line, pitchers score less. So you're getting even worse. The gap is growing even higher at the end.
Another, I think, like you said, like anyone who's in here and like listening is probably drafting, a lot of teams. And I think the way I was explaining it to someone was that if you only do like 1, 2, 3 drafts on Underdog this season, then I totally get like not wanting to lean into pitchers early because pitchers get hurt more. And that's just going to create a more fragile build. But if you are someone who's doing like volume drafts, I think you should absolutely be mixing in some high variance builds where you, and again, because of the prices that the aces can be had at right now, I think it makes a ton of sense to like have a draft where you take 4 starting pitchers in your first 7 picks. Because if those starting pitchers stay healthy and you have those horses going in to the playoffs and you combine it with all of these infielders and outfielders just giving you more and more shots at a spike week, I think that that's the best macro.
The last stream got interrupted by dogs at the end too.
Your
So
dogs do not like fading the late
you.
round pitches. But no, I think that's the best build that you can make is you go into the playoffs with healthy aces that you took early and have been performing, and then you just have like tons of position players to round it out.
All right, I think they calmed down a little bit.
Of course, the inverse to that is at the end of the day, despite all this macro of a talk, you just gotta pick the right players. So
yeah, it's that I've joked about it. All you needed to do last year was draft Aaron Judge and Bo Bichette and Framber Valdez, and you could have won. It's just that easy.
yeah.
And the other caveat to all this is 1 year worth of data.
Mm-hmm.
So like we don't really know what means what as far as year to year.
Yeah, I think baseball went on the Badge Bros show to discuss that, and he really did a good job of emphasizing that. Like, this is the info we have, but it doesn't mean it's it's everything. I think again, like what that, and that doesn't mean if I was someone who was doing 100 drafts that I would never take a pitcher in the last 5 rounds, but it just does give me pause. Like, hey, like this probably isn't the best format to be getting all your Hunter Brown shares. Like, get those in Dynasty if you want some redraft leagues, and maybe buy some of the sports cards, but not necessarily this format.
Yeah. All right, so it looks like they need one more for a fast. I have to run here, so thank you. I'm so happy that you joined me tonight. We got to talk in person for the first time now, and thanks for joining me. And you want to just make sure people know where to find you and your work at?
Yeah, no, we'll have to do it again because I feel like we only talked, about the tip of the iceberg, and then there's going to be all in-season stuff to talk about too. So I think it's really cool, like everything you're doing here. It seems like you have like a real edge in these drafts, and building a good community with it. Underdog Network is where articles go up about Underdog. I'm on Twitter at @TooMuchTuma, and then I also have a Substack where I kind of just write about baseball, not specifically geared towards Underdog, but just all sorts of baseball thoughts in general. So yeah, that's just like Brendan Tuma Substack.
A lot of dynasty stuff there.
Yeah, and that's where I have to. I love prospects. I love dynasty, and that's where I have to hold back on O'Neal Cruz and Hunter Brown and those guys in this format. But no, this was like awesome. And again, like seriously, we should do it again sometime.
Yes, yeah. And I don't know. I'm going to try to do these most Fridays. We'll see with my schedule and stuff. Everybody like the video and all that stuff. But we'll be back, and I'm sure we'll be talking again.
All
and I'll
right.
be DMing you random.
No, of course. That sounds
All right.
good.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Love ya.